Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 38, I Am a Cat. Edogawa Ranpo. This name, Komaeda Nagito, really knows well. Not only because Edogawa Ranpo in another world is also a famous literary figure, but also because, in this world, Edogawa Ranpo is indeed a well-known detective. Especially in Yokohama, when Komaeda Nagito visits the police station, he frequently hears the police chatting about Edogawa Ranpo. It is said that the other party is currently working for a detective agency in cooperation with the government. In fact, Komaeda Nagito had long wanted to visit him, but after arriving in this world, things became too complicated. Recently, just finding a place to stay has been giving him a headache. He can't possibly show up at Ranpo-san's place to ask for help in finding housing, right? Komaeda Nagito hadn't actually planned anything. He came by to visit, but felt like he might be disturbing the other person's work, which truly was an unforgivable action. So, he kept delaying until now, and still hadn't been able to meet that detective Edogawa. However, if Little Raccoon-san also thought that Edogawa Ranpo was amazing, then they would have more in common. Komaeda Nagito immediately replied, I know him. I'm in Yokohama, and I often hear about the legendary detective Edogawa. Truly an incredible person. Little Raccoon. Komaeda Nagito, in a burst of enthusiasm, responded right away, only to realize afterwards that he should be trying to get closer to Little Raccoon-san, not picking at the other's scars. It is said that this person was defeated last year because they were too emotional, so they were provoked? Could it be Edogawa Ranpo? But that's not necessarily true, after all, it's just speculation. Thus, Komaeda Nagito replied again, are you planning to challenge Detective Edogawa? In other words, do you want to come to Japan? Then you need to practice your Japanese well. Right now, for some unknown reason, a lot of victims is especially skilled in cryptography, and they left very complicated final words. If your Japanese isn't good, you might not even be able to decipher those final words. Kudo Shinichi often brought up some cases during his chats with Komaeda Nagito. After hearing one where the victim used their own blood to write a symbol before dying, which later turned out to be the killer's name, Komaeda found himself amazed. After listening to many such stories, he developed a great respect for Tokyo's people's cultural quality. They could still think of such complicated things while suffering from blood loss and oxygen deprivation. How impressive. After Komaeda Nagito replies, Little Raccoon-san seemed withdrawn and started to fall behind in reading again. Komaeda Nagito also wasn't anxious. After all, he had already gotten to interact with Little Raccoon-san, initially unfamiliar but gradually becoming accustomed. Wanting to pry open the other's mouth today would certainly be much easier compared to yesterday. Remembering that he had go on the computer since getting out of bed, Komaeda Nagito turned around to do his proper work. The doctor had specifically instructed him to have a good breakfast. He went to the kitchen, rummaged around, found a box of nearly expired cookies, and brewed a cup of coffee, then returned to the computer. He discovered that Little Raccoon-san had already read it but hadn't replied, but now began to respond, and even sent him a compressed file. This is a few of the novels mentioned before, you can take it for your friend to read. Komaeda Nagito's eyes lit up. Just as he was about to reply with thanks, he was hit with another message. You said in Yokohama that you'd help us out. We want to know what Edogawa Ranpo has been working on recently. Overseas news tends to lag a bit. As compensation, we can send you a new short novel every month. Komaeda Nagito didn't reply immediately. Instead, he took a bite of the cookie, downloaded the compressed file and quickly decompressed it to have a look at this novel, planning to assess the author's level. A few minutes later, Komaeda Nagito finished reading the short story and breathed a sigh of relief. That's really great, as expected of Ayatsuji Yukido-sensei, who highly values writers. His level is indeed much stronger than those superficial works on the market. According to him, even compared to Kudo Yusaku, Little Raccoon-san is absolutely not inferior. So, the fact that he refuses to publish, remains low-key, and almost has no reputation in the outside world is very thought-provoking. It seems there's indeed some issue with his real-life identity. Although it's temporarily impossible to figure out the other party's identity, Komaeda Nagito's attitude towards Little Raccoon-san has clearly changed. At the very least, from a relatively superficial polite praise, it has become genuine feelings, and what's more, he readily agreed to the other party's request. No problem. Leave it to me. Little Raccoon-san is also a very capable person. I really look forward to seeing you and Detective Edogawa face off. It will definitely bloom with dazzling hope. Ah, if that day comes, please let me know. Just thinking about it makes me feel so excited. Detectives facing off directly, it will definitely. Little Raccoon-san seemed to be frightened by Komaeda Nagito's enthusiasm, unable to get back on track. After waiting for about another half an hour, Komaeda Nagito had already finished eating and taken a shower before the other shakily replies. Then I'll leave the intelligence gathering to you. Temporarily, there was no need to continue contacting Little Raccoon-san, so Komaeda Nagito distributed the compressed files separately to Kudo Shinichi and Ayatsuji Yukido, feeling that he had completed this task splendidly, absolutely perfectly. Ayatsuji Yukido quickly replied with a thank you email, which was very brief, containing just one sentence, "Thank you." However, Kudo Shinichi was different. He excitedly called directly. "Senpai. Is this a collection of Little Raccoon-san's works?" He deleted all of them before, and even the copies I saved on my computer mysteriously disappeared. "Where did you find these?" Komaeda Nagito leaned back on the chair, smiling as he said, "In exchange for conditions with Little Raccoon-san, Kudo-kun, didn't you said you wanted to see great detective novels that you've never read before? Probably after a while, you'll get it." No, there are a few volumes compressed in the file that I haven't seen yet." Kudo Shinichi said with emotion, "How did you manage it, senpai?" "I also tried to make a deal with Little Raccoon-san before, but he ignored me." Wait a second. Kudo Shinichi suddenly realized something, and his mouth twitched. "Senpai, you didn't happen to share yesterday's culprit, who was a monkey, to Little Raccoon-san, did you?" "Yes, is there a problem?" "No, of course, there's no problem." Recalling the suffering he went through yesterday, Kudo Shinichi inexplicably felt sympathy for Little Raccoon-san. "By the way, senpai, could you share that one from yesterday with me? He can't be the only one to suffer." "Sure." Having give proper credits to the original author, Komaeda Nagito had no pressure at all. "But as for the author's contact information, I really don't have it, you know." Kudo Shinichi squinted and complained, "Senpai, are you worried that after reading the novel, someone might want to send razor blades to the author?" Kudo Shinichi initially doubted whether the story Dandanbashi, Ojita was written by Komaeda senpai, but now he realized that the senpai could form a connection with even mysterious people like Little Raccoon-san, and given his consistent admiration for talented individuals, Kudo Shinichi found it quite normal for senpai to know a couple of modest yet gifted authors. Speaking of this, Komaeda senpai, have you ever considered writing a detective novel? Kudo Shinichi suddenly grew interested. "I'm a bit curious about what kind of case Komaeda senpai might come up with." Komaeda Nagito smiled wryly. "Spare me, you already have so many Little Raccoon-san novels to read, there's no need to waste time on a rookie work like this." "'Cause I'm curious, I feel like Komaeda senpai." Kudo Shinichi thought back to the case he talked with Komaeda Nagito, recalling the other's reasoning style. Hesitantly, he said, "Seems like you're really good at this sort of thing. If you don't write novels, senpai, maybe you should try being a detective." Instead of asking me, "Shouldn't Kudo-kun consider writing a novel yourself?" Komaeda Nagito threw the question back at him. "I'd be quite eager to read Kudo-kun's novel too." Kudo Shinichi. "My dream is to become a detective like Holmes. Writing detective novels can help you understand the mindset of criminals more clearly, which is also beneficial for detective work. Your father probably agrees with this perspective as well." The 14-year-old Kudo Shinichi hesitated for a moment, but writing novels and detective work aren't the same thing. "You know Edogawa Ranpo-san from Yokohama, right?" He's amazing at solving mysteries, but if you ask him to write something, I'm sure he wouldn't be able to. Komaeda Nagito. Ah, what a pity, yet another literary legend who completely switched careers. However, your suggestion isn't bad. Let me consider it a bit. Kudo Shinichi still had confidence. Thinking about it, it's quite interesting, designing a case myself where readers can't guess the truth until the end. If I can write it, I'll definitely show it to senpai. Good luck. Komaeda Nagito encouraged, I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully, I can see it before I start high school. It seems the literary world of this world can still be saved a bit. Komaeda Nagito hung up the phone, feeling that the world had become a little better again. He couldn't deny it, this world made Komaeda Nagito feel like something was off. Besides not having Hope's Peak Academy, there was also the issue of the struggling literary world. Komaeda Nagito currently spends his time watching a certain nation's president make speeches about patriotism. The English skills really connects with many others with poor comprehension skills. When he looked at his latest language exam that he took and saw the reading comprehension questions, he genuinely felt suffocated. Komaeda Nagito felt that if he continued watching these masterpieces of literature every day, he probably wouldn't be able to meet the standard for the language exam if he returned to his original world. Good or bad, after the president next door changed, even elementary school students could understand the speeches of the former bad president. That era has passed, but when looking at the literary world of today, the future seems a bit hopeless. The leaders are still leaders, but their numbers is especially lacking, and the fractures are severe. It's simply not something one or two people can salvage. Moreover, instead of saving the literary world, Komaeda Nagito would rather save his own proficiency in his foreign language first. Opening his notebook to organize some notes on the language, Komaeda Nagito sighed, the simplest way is to read more books, good books. But in Japan, probably only Natsume Soseki meets the requirements to a reasonable extent. Intentionally, Natsume Soseki in this world has a very low output, just a few volumes, and Komaeda Nagito almost has them all memorized by heart. Komaeda Nagito unconsciously wrote and doodled on the notebook, and when he regained his focus, he realized he had written something strange. He looked at the sentence and recalled, Dostoevsky. This wasn't the first time such a situation had occurred. Whenever he spaced out, he would easily write down bits from another world. Sometimes it was song lyrics, sometimes movie titles, sometimes sentences from books, and sometimes people's names. This kind of unconscious writing, rather than deliberately recalling the details of the situation, wouldn't actually trigger a headache for him, but translating literary works into the Japanese wasn't very helpful, especially now when he wanted to quote a famous saying. He couldn't just use the phrases he was familiar with, which was quite painful. Sigh. Who is Natsume-sensei's editor? Why can't they rush him to write a new book faster? Komaeda Nagito turned over the page, planning to reorganize the notes again. Just then, he heard the doorbell ring. Komaeda Nagito rarely had visitors. The last time someone rang his doorbell, it was someone from the special division coming to have him sign a confidentiality agreement, so he guessed it might be a salesperson this time. In theory, salespeople would ring the doorbell, wait for a while, and leave if no one responded. However, just as Komaeda Nagito had walked to put away some of his belongings, the doorbell rang again. Could it really be something important this time? Komaeda Nagito finally stood up and walked to the door. Looking through the peephole, Komaeda Nagito was a little surprised as he opened the door. Dazai-kun? Standing at the door and ringing the bell was none other than Dazai-osamu, whom he had seen just the other day. If Komaeda-kun doesn't open the door again, I'll have no choice but to call you. After all, this time it needs to be Komaeda-kun who opens the door himself. Komaeda Nagito paused as he hastily gathered scattered books, clothes, and various items on the sofa. Why? Komaeda-kun should be clearer about that than me, right? Recently, you've been provoking someone. Dazai Osamu sat directly on the sofa where Komaeda Nagito had just tidied, smiling cheerfully as he spoke. They've tracked you all the way to Yokohama. Komaeda Nagito indeed had some guesses. Morofushi Hiromitsu did mention that recently there might be people from that organization coming to investigate him. But I didn't think it's going to be that fast. Komaeda Nagito seemed to be in thought. Dazai Osamu pouted, because you're really famous, Komaeda-kun. Who? Me? Yes, like that old man from Tei Corporation, for example. I heard that lately, when he scolds his subordinates, he always brings you up. Komaeda Nagito was speechless for a moment. Also, weren't you involved in the Reigo Island incident before? Although most of the traces was erased by the government, the detective who solved that case, Ayatsuji Yukito, is your neighbor. You moved immediately afterward, which anyone with a bit of sense would know was due to police interference. Dazai Osamu began by discussing Komaeda Nagito's recent involvements and eventually got to the point. Because of too many rumors, too many connections, that organization is roughly suspicious whether or not you're with the police. Komaeda Nagito also sat down. In other words, just now outside, there was someone from that organization investigating me? That's right. Dazai Osamu said with a smile. Now they can confirm that you have no relation to the police. Instead, your relationship with the port mafia is rather good, huh? Komaeda Nagito knew very well that after yesterday's events, Amuro Toru and Akai Shuichi would be excluded from the investigation team outside, so those who come to investigate him definitely wouldn't help cover up for him. Furthermore, it's likely that Morofushi Hiromitsu's identity as a Japanese police officer has already been exposed. If he also has connections with the police, then appearing at that building might not be just a coincidence on the surface. Instead, having ties to the port mafia would make the suspicion slightly smaller. Even towards a certain organization out there, dealing with the police is no big deal, but making a move against an organization entirely in the dark world would require much more caution. Because the government might still have many concerns, but for the underworld organizations, their morale is very low, so there is no guess what they would do. Dazai-kun, did you intentionally come to help me? Komaeda Nagito asked curiously. Not really. Dazai Osamu answered cheerfully, his tone shifting from flamboyant to somewhat calmer. I was just passing by and thought that Komaeda-kun's house should be around here, so I dropped by. Unexpectedly, I found someone investigating you, so I just conveniently handled it. Komaeda Nagito didn't mind and smiled. Still, thank you, Dazai-kun. But does the mafia also get weekends off? I'm a bit surprised. Mafia obviously doesn't have weekends off. Damn it. Dazai Osamu said naturally, I'm skipping. Komaeda Nagito. I originally thought becoming an executive would make things a bit easier, but yesterday I got a new subordinate, and after saying a few words, I was already exhausted and escaped quickly. Mentioning the subordinate he brought back last night, Dazai Osamu couldn't help but sigh deeply. Why can't there be more smart people around? If it wasn't too early now, and Oda Saku and Ango weren't at the bar, he would want to go there to rant. The bar is out of the question, Dazai Osamu thought for half a day, but only Komaeda Nagito's place could still let him have some fun for a while. Boss Mori also wanted him to give Komaeda-kun a try, and since he was here, Mori-san wouldn't be in a hurry to rush him back. Who knows, he might even actively help him get rid of a few tasks. Yesterday morning after he returned, he reported to Boss Mori about the Natsume Soseki-related matter he had discussed with Komaeda Nagito. Boss Mori clearly regarded Komaeda-kun with a bit more importance. As expected, he found it odd that there were literary works of Natsume Soseki, which had never been published, coming out of Komaeda-kun, didn't he? Dazai Osamu, though curious about Komaeda Nagito, wasn't interested in Mori Ogai's orders, at least not now. He wasn't in the mood to deal with anything related to Natsume Soseki, and instead asked, Komaeda-kun, what do you usually do on your days off? Komaeda Nagito replied, probably just do homework, and after finishing the assignments, I'll do other things. Though sometimes the unfortunate event of my completed assignments getting ruined happens, I don't plan on changing the order. Homework, huh? Dazai-osamu suddenly got interested. I've never seen regular junior high homework before. No, to be exact, I've never even seen a junior high textbook. Komaeda Nagito speculated that Dazai-osamu might be self-taught or have had some sort of private tutor. Anyway, from daily interactions, even though he didn't seem to enjoy reading, his cultural level wasn't low. Moreover, it was understandable if he didn't like those kinds of books, they were too ordinary. Seeing Dazai-osamu's sparkling, almost reverent eyes, Komaeda Nagito hesitated for a moment, then offered, "Wanna come to my room and take a look? All my textbooks are there. The second room next door is." "Right, what do you want to drink? Coffee or water?" "I've only got instant coffee." "Coffee's fine." Dazai-osamu stood up, lightly stepping into Komaeda Nagito's room. This is actually a bedroom, but beside the bed, there's a desk that serves as a study as well. His gaze swept over the leftover coffee cup, half a packet of cookies, and a computer in sleep mode, before finally resting on the desk. Dazai-osamu unceremoniously sat in the swivel chair at the desk, leisurely spun around once, and then picked up the Japanese language textbook on the table, flipping to the study exercises at the end. Why did the author describe the curtain as blue? Analyze the thoughts and emotions expressed by the author in this passage. Why does the author think that life is like bread? Dazai-osamu fell silent. Do ordinary junior high students have to face these kinds of stupid questions every day? It feels a bit pitiful. Instantly losing interest in the junior high textbook, Dazai-osamu was about to casually place the book back on the table, when he noticed something written on the reverse side of the page. He picked it up again to take a closer look. Life, full of sound and passion, yet inside empty of anything. It was also written in English. Why is there English written in a Japanese language textbook? Dazai-osamu became interested, flipping through a bit more, and found that in the other empty spaces of the textbook, there were occasionally a few sentences seemingly written absent-mindedly during class, unrelated to the lesson. Norwegian wood. I am a cat, Natsume so seki. Does understanding everything mean forgiving everything? I don't know. There's something I call loathsome knowledge. It's when you see through a certain matter and it makes you feel so disgusted you could die, with not a trace of compromise in your emotions. Dazai-osamu, with an indifferent expression, stared at this final passage, his fingers lightly brushing the writing on the edge of the page. Then, upon hearing footsteps, he placed the textbook back in its original spot. After making the coffee, Komaeda Nagito handed it to Dazai-osamu. As he took it, Dazai-osamu's thoughts still lingering on what he had just seen in those lines. He took a sip, and couldn't help but stick out his tongue from the bitterness, finally snapping back to reality. Dazai-osamu questioned Komaeda Nagito. Komaeda-kun, do you often space out during class? Huh? Komaeda Nagito was stunned, then quickly responded, smiling awkwardly, sometimes I scribble a few things. Did you see it? Yeah, I saw it. There's something I wanted to ask. Dazai-osamu put down the coffee cup, looking at Komaeda Nagito with curiosity. Why did you put Natsume so seki's name next to I am a cat? Is this a new work by Natsume-sensei? Chapter 38 End.